Hey, thank you very much. There was some real actionable items there that I think we're going to see hopefully in the coming session. And so now we've come to our last panel of the day. I'm going to introduce Amy Paterson, and she is going to be the moderator of the Nature Based Solutions panel. And I think you're going to hear a lot of good information about what we can do and what's happening right now, what's being implemented based on recent laws that have just passed with some experts that we have. So I'm going to introduce Amy, and she's going to take care of the other introductions. So Amy has over 20 years experience as a land use attorney, and she joined the Connecticut Land Conservation Council in 2010 as the first executive director. But prior to CLCC, Amy worked for the Trust for Public Land and served as a staff lawyer for the U.S. Department of Justice. So Amy co-chairs the state's Natural Heritage, Open Space, and Watershed Land Acquisition Review Board. She was appointed to the Environment Committee for the Lamont Biswas administration's transition team, to the Forest subgroup of the Governor's Council on Climate Change, and to the Policy on Resilient Forests for Connecticut Future, aka the Perfect Future Working Group. And she's also a member of the Working Lands Alliance Steering Committee. So she's going to come up with Eric Hammerling and Leigh Whelpton. And thank you so much for coming.
Great. Thank you all so much. It's great that there are people still here. We're here at the end of the day. I heard Alicia say she didn't like to go right before lunch. Well, we're in the dubious position of going before the end of the day. So we'll do our best to keep this really exciting and fun and positive. And here we go. So again, I'm Amy Paterson. I'm the executive director of the Connecticut Land Conservation Council, and we are the umbrella for the state's 120 or so land trusts. Each year, CLCC prepares our annual legislative priorities, and we always focus all of them in some way, shape, or form on our mission to strengthen and elevate land conservation in Connecticut. And for the past several years, we've been working with many of our colleagues, our agency colleagues, our advocates, legislators, to ensure that nature-based solutions are elevated and prioritized as part of state policy. So today, we're going to talk about that, and I'm very excited to welcome two of my outstanding colleagues who will share some good news on the steps that are being taken in Connecticut to advance nature-based solutions as part of our public policy. Eric Hammerling, who is the Office Director at DEEP's Environmental Review and Strategic Initiatives, or ERSI. And Leigh Whelpton, the Director of Environmental Infrastructure Programs at the Connecticut Green Bank. And they will introduce themselves more, give you a little bit more insight into what they're doing in their respective roles when they speak. Next slide, please. So if I was in a hand-raising kind of mood, I would ask you, who in this room doesn't think that nature is important? Not a trick question, right? Nobody's going to raise their hand. I don't really need to tell you why nature is so important. But here's a laundry list of why. Some of the benefits that we have from nature, plain and simple, provides a myriad of benefits. Next slide, please. Forests, trees, wetlands, meadows, riparian buffers, go Alicia, healthy soils, the natural and working lands that we seek to protect. These are the nature-based solutions to many of our community's environmental and social issues. This is a definition, and it was taken out of one of the statutes that we're going to talk about. It was derived from it. Take a quick look at that. It's pretty simple stuff. Nature is pretty simple, but it's also extremely powerful. Next slide, please. So this isn't Amy Paterson's great idea. At every level, there's been a call to action to save our natural systems with a consensus that they are key to saving biodiversity, increasing resilience, and mitigating against the effects of climate change, in addition to so many of those co-benefits that I listed on that earlier slide. At the global level, nature-based solutions have been prioritized. They take center stage at the United Nations Climate Change Conference, or COP 28, 29, which was just this past November. And 29 was really focusing on implementation, taking action, taking recommendations around nature-based solutions, putting them into action. Tell you, especially after this long day of hearing after another, remind you. Sorry? Okay, yeah. Is that better? The steps back that we are currently taking under the current administration. This slide was adapted from presentations that I have done before on nature-based solutions, including at this summit in previous years. And in previous years, what I have slashed here were actually proposals from the United States government that were being moved forward. They were treaties that we were part of. They were world organizations that we participated in, that we led. Well, I put slashes because that's no longer the case. And because of the steps back that we have taken at the federal level when it comes to protecting land, protecting nature, it's really critical that states take the lead as well as their communities. And these are some of the states that have really done a great job of advancing nature-based solutions in terms of their policies and their legislation. Next slide, please. And Connecticut is poised to lead on this issue as well. In 2021, under the Governor's Executive Order 21-3, the Governor's Council on Climate Change was, or GC3, was created. And if you look at that executive order, nature-based solutions are in there. It is part of the mandate of that executive order that when the Governor's Council on Climate Change was established and the working groups were put in place, a Working in Natural Lands working group was part of that. And within that working group, there were many, many subgroups under that topic. The subgroup reports that came out of that were fabulous, and the recommendations are there and they are ready for implementation. And similarly, we have a laundry list as well of other plans in this state that all integrate nature as a solution. Now we need to take action. Next slide, please. And here we are. It's really a pleasure to stand up here and say, hey, we have some victories. In 2025, we worked really hard to make sure that several of the bills that incorporated provisions around nature-based solutions made it across the finish line. And when I say we, that is a big collective we. That's advocates, that's legislators, that's the agencies, all working together to ensure that those nature-based solutions provisions were incorporated in larger bills that were meant to advance climate action in Connecticut. And today we're going to just talk quickly about two of them, House Bill 5004 and SB 9. And I will say, somebody earlier, I think actually it was Representative Parker who had said, you can't give up on the first go round, right? It takes years sometimes to get a bill across the finish line. And we were really excited because in 2024, big disappointments around both of these bills, but in 2025, they made it. And that's a big deal. You should all give yourselves a round of applause because you helped make that happen. So now comes the fun part and also the challenging part, and that is implementation. It's great to have the language in statute. It's great to have nature-based solutions as a concept codified in the Connecticut General Statutes. It's another thing to do something with it. And that is what we're working on now with our colleagues here today. So, next slide, please. Without further ado, I would like to welcome Eric Hammerling, who's leading the effort on behalf of DEEP to implement Section 12 of Public Act 25-125. So Eric, take it away.
All right, thank you, Amy. And it's great to see everyone. I was just thinking about how I've been coming to these environmental summits since 2003. If I look familiar to some of you, wearing some previous hats, I used to be the executive director of the Farmington River Watershed Association, and then the executive director of the Connecticut Forest and Park Association. So I feel like I know a little bit about nature-based solutions, and was really honored when I was asked by Commissioner Dykes to be the one to help coordinate this study on behalf of our agency, and also get input from a lot of other state agencies and stakeholders who are interested in nature-based solutions. I'll mention very briefly, there is one other element of the bill that this is mentioned in, which is related to nature-based solutions as well. In Public Act 25-125, the report is in section 12, but in section 2, there's a net zero policy associated with Connecticut, which means that if we achieve at least 80% of our emissions targets in terms of reducing emissions, we're also able to consider the negative emissions associated with natural and working lands. So there's also now a requirement when you see our annual inventory of emissions, you'll see now an inventory that talks about how much is sequestered by forests and wetlands and our natural ecosystems. So that's a new thing that's also associated with this legislation. But in this bill, we were encouraged to do several things, and I'll talk very specifically about what we have to do in this report. We are required in this report to evaluate how state agencies, DEEP and several others, integrate and advance nature-based solutions in several different ways. Integrate basically means, how are we doing things within our current programs, but also advance means what might we be interested in doing looking forward. So there is that openness to what's next. We are encouraged in this report to also look at various best practices, and there are 10 different best practices associated with nature-based solutions that are specifically mentioned in the legislation that get some treatment. We are required to consult with 7 other state agencies, not just to say what is DEEP doing, but what are all these agencies doing? And Leigh will talk a bit about what the Green Bank is doing, but there are several others that are doing some fascinating work in that area that I'll just touch on very briefly. There is, in addition to getting input from other state agencies, a requirement that we get input from all of you. And I'm hoping that since this report is due to be published on our webpage at DEEP by July 1st of this year, we're also required to have a public listening opportunity where the public is encouraged to, and we hope to have a draft available at that time to get your input. We're expecting that to be in late May. So I guess stay tuned. It will be after this legislative session, hopefully planting some seeds for next year. But we think it will be an exciting report, an opportunity to get some input from you, looking forward at some of the exciting things ahead. Next slide, please. So I wanted to just list out for those of you who are saying, 7 other agencies, who might those be? Here they are. The Connecticut Green Bank, Department of Agriculture, DEEP, and just within our agency, I'll mention every single bureau within DEEP has programs that are connected to nature-based solutions. And in some ways, you might say, well, isn't everything that DEEP does, can it be boiled down to nature-based solutions? In some ways, it can be. But we tried to identify what wound up being like the top 21 programs that are doing work in that area. And in that report, you'll see for all of these agencies, the things that are happening within that subject area. Department of Housing, the Insurance Department, Department of Public Health, Department of Transportation, and the Office of Policy and Management. Let me just mention very quickly, because some of these might look odd to you. Like you might be wondering, Department of Housing, what are they doing in the nature-based solutions area? Well, think about it. They have a charge of increasing affordable housing for Connecticut. There are so many decisions that are made in the development of affordable housing that can affect nature-based solutions. And you might be encouraged to know that the Department of Housing now has a sustainability guide that they provide to developers who are developing affordable housing, which says, we support the following types of activities. It's not a requirement for developers, but it says, here's what the Department of Housing stands for. And it really says, we want to see natural ecosystems protected. And I mean, there are some good things in there that very few people probably know about. So you'll learn about that in this report. The Department of Insurance, what do they have to do with nature-based solutions? Well, think about flood insurance. Think about the siting of various places that might be potentially at risk if there were a climate-related catastrophe. All of the decisions that are made in the insurance world now in Connecticut, there actually are some requirements and we are, many people don't appreciate this, but our state is one of the leaders in the nation in having disclosures related to climate risks that are, since 2022, we were one of the first states in the nation to require all of our domestic insurance providers to have those disclosures. And now all of our insurance agency is looking at how they're part of a sustainable insurance forum to see how nature-based solutions can also be considered in by insurance providers looking forward. So there's some exciting things in all of these agencies that are going on, and some opportunities for advancement that I think you'll learn about soon. With that, I'll turn things over to Leigh to talk about the Green Bank, and then we'll open up for some questions.
Is this one on? Can folks hear me okay? Great. So I'll pick up on a little bit of the ways in which risk disclosure factors into the governor's resilience bill. But first, I'm Leigh Whelpton. I'm the director of environmental infrastructure programs at the Connecticut Green Bank. I started my career hugging cheetahs, and then I figured out very quickly that the future of species like cheetahs and the ecosystems and the communities that they rely on depend entirely on money. So now I hug bankers. I'll also say, by way of a personal introduction, it's very special to be in community with you all this afternoon. My grandmother was very much one of my conservation heroes, and she started the local chapter of the Ohio League of Conservation Voters where I grew up. So it's just a fabulous group to be with today. Thank you for having us. Thank you for all the work behind the scenes that it goes to pull off an event like this. It's not for the faint of heart. So the Connecticut Green Bank, for folks who are less familiar with us, we are a quasi-public state agency created through a bipartisan act of the legislature in 2011 to accelerate the deployment of clean energy and now environmental infrastructure to use limited amounts of public capital to increase private investment. Our mission is to confront climate change, and we do that to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and to accelerate the investment into Connecticut's green economy to create more resilient, healthy, and equitable communities. Our vision, and this is one that we all take to heart, is a planet protected by the love of humanity, which is a very big part of our organizational ethos. As such, we use private sector disciplines to achieve public sector objectives. And by that, we are in the markets looking at forward-looking ways to work at the speed of business to help bring more private capital in to help solve some of the challenges associated with meeting state public policy objectives. Since inception, we've mobilized over $3 billion in Connecticut's green economy. That is at a ratio of 1 to 7 in terms of public to private funds levered, and have helped the creation of over 30,000 green jobs in the state and reducing the energy cost burden of over 70,000 families, businesses, and nonprofits. In 2021, and this is where I come in 2021, another bipartisan act of the legislature, Public Act 21-115, expanded the Green Bank scope from clean energy into environmental infrastructure, inclusive of water, climate adaptation and resilience, waste and recycling, agriculture, land conservation, parks and recreation, and environmental markets. It's a big scope expansion for us. We're diligently trying to figure out how to put that in motion. And our approach to environmental infrastructure includes nature-based solutions as well as hard infrastructure or hybrid solutions that can help to increase both, and this is important, both does a lot of work in this scenario, both ecological and social resilience. As part of this work, we supported the nature-based solutions provisions of both the Green Monster, affectionately named House Bill 5004. Now, congratulations and kudos, folks. Public Act 25 oh my gosh, 125. Thank you. I say it enough. I should have it. As well as the governor's resilience bill and some of its provisions for resiliency improvement districts with a priority for nature-based solutions in then Senate Bill 9 and now Public Act 25-33. Our contributions to the report Eric's working on include 3 well-established and successful financing products that the Green Bank offers, which have been recently expanded to include nature-based solutions. Folks may be familiar with some of these. The first is our Smart E-Loan, which is a lending product for homeowners that includes many improvements that can be financed with low-interest, flexible term loans, and now including certain aspects of nature-based solutions, such as impervious to pervious surface conversion and native and shade tree species planting. Next up, our commercial property assessed clean energy program. This is primarily for industrial, commercial, and institutional property owners. So it is a commercial financing product that was recently expanded to support eligible resiliency improvements. And in the nature-based solutions realm, this could include things like green stormwater infrastructure for stormwater management solutions, or thinking about some of our coastal properties, living shorelines, and other nature-based solution design mechanisms for coastal protection, especially combating the risk of sea level rise. Lastly, Green Bank Capital Solutions is an open rolling RFP, which provides access to capital for mission-aligned Connecticut-based projects, which include eligibility for all manner of environmental infrastructure. I'll share just a quick note for Smart E. Private capital is available through participating lending institutions. So think about community development finance institutions and credit unions, as well as through a Green Bank loan loss reserve. So primarily we support that one through program administration and credit enhancement and leverage. The technical term of art is other people's money through participating lenders. And then for the projects that we originate through the commercial property assessed clean energy program or for capital solutions, the caveat there is just that environmental infrastructure related projects are financed with non-ratepayer funds, and that is per Connecticut General Statute 16-245A. All right, so that kind of wraps up the submission that we made to Eric's report and gives you a sense of the Green Bank product offerings that already encourage the adoption of nature-based solutions, whether in residential projects, in commercial projects, or on a to-be-defined open and bespoke project basis. But that's not all. So last session, also we saw a massive achievement in the passage of Public Act 25-33. This one is certainly near and dear to our hearts at the Green Bank. We put a lot of effort into thinking about how to increase or the efficacy of that bill and to help get it through. Congratulations and kudos. As was already mentioned, it takes a lot of effort to get these massive bill packages through. So a lot of institutions in the room that certainly were supporters of that in various aspects, as well as folks like Representative Parker, who's I think stepped out, was a big defender of the bill on the House floor when it came for debate, Joanna Wozniak-Brown, and some of the others who were stalwarts and champions of this incredible package of resilience measures. I'll share just a few key provisions. Apologies, I'm not off book yet. It's a pretty massive bill. Folks haven't read it. But Mandatory flood risk disclosures, so where home sellers must disclose FEMA floodplain status, flood damage history, prior insurance claims. Simple, stupid, but was not a part of Connecticut law prior to that. Expands the coastal site plan review, requires that threats like sea level rise to critical infrastructure be factored into municipal evacuation and hazard mitigation plans, requires the mapping of culvert and bridges, i.e., critical climate vulnerable infrastructure, enables municipal reserve funds to function as climate resilient funding mechanisms, ensures that plans of conservation development must now incorporate climate vulnerability assessments, among other elements, also requires that regional POCDs must protect ecosystem services, ensuring consistency with hazard mitigation plans and mapping critical facilities, mandates that municipalities affected by tidal flooding must amend zoning regulations to mitigate sea level change impacts, obligates state agencies to update water supply and sewage regulations every 10 years to reflect the current climate projections or climate realities that we're trying to plan around. And then, very importantly, from our perspective, also has enabling authorities for resiliency improvement districts. These are a new municipal tool to finance and implement climate adaptation and resilience projects through special districts that have bonding authority and also assessment agreements, tax assessment agreements. Who among you knew that all of that was tucked into the resilience bill? One hand in the back.
Hands, I see a few more.
All right. If you have an encyclopedic brain, then kudos to you and good on you. So, related to the subject at hand, I'll just note the legislation specifically calls for priority consideration in the solicitation and design of infrastructure projects that increase resilience and utilize nature and nature-based solutions, as well as prioritizing the needs of environmental justice and vulnerable communities. Am I doing okay on time?
You're doing okay. Keep
All
going.
right. Got like 2 more minutes.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. So from our vantage point, I'll just say, commenting on Public Act 25-33, this is a really powerful new tool for municipalities to effectively future-proof themselves. So it allows communities to create special districts that can finance improvement projects to protect against certain climate shocks and chronic stressors. So think about sea level rise, think about heat, think about certainly flooding and other risk exposures. And it's really, at the end of the day, a dedicated funding mechanism where property owners within that district unit, however it be defined, invest in projects that directly protect and benefit those properties. The passage of the legislation was certainly a great achievement. I think the theme of this panel and hopefully of many of our work going forward is it's not enough to just pass a bill. You have to implement. So we, for our part, are working on a pilot effort with the Resilient Cities Catalyst to try and test out what could a resiliency improvement district look like. We've got the statute. What does it look like to put this in motion? Resilient Cities Catalyst, for their part, is also working in tandem with California Forward on parallel new authorities. We call them resiliency improvement districts. They call them climate resilience districts in California. So we are building camaraderie and sharing insight with our West Coast colleagues as we go. We are working to find 3 or more Connecticut municipalities who want to work with us to help pilot these new authorities. Participating municipal partners will receive design and technical assistance, connection to a national peer learning network, expert advisory support, and practical toolkits and templates. We want to help prove that it's not just the statutory authorities, but what they can actually do to help empower Connecticut municipalities to increase and improve their own resilience. So we're kicking off exploratory conversations right now with municipalities. We will be formally launching the pilot in the next month or so. And if this seems like it's of interest, we encourage you to visit the Green Bank booth or come find me after the panel. I'll share a caveat that we are looking for municipal partners in this, so folks who are really in the driver's seat of being able to make decisions on behalf of their municipality. But other than that, we're really excited to help try and turn the vision for what this new resilience package can be into some proven proof points across the state.
Thank you both so much. We have about 6 7 minutes for questions. So I'm going to skip through some of ours because there's some really good questions that have come in through this program here. But I'm going to read something and then I want you to respond to it in the form of a question. According to the Land Trust Alliance, we lose approximately 150 acres of natural land and 40 acres of farmland every hour. That's nationally. That's staggering. And here in Connecticut, we're losing land at an alarming rate. We're losing wetlands at an alarming rate. Our nature is under siege here, right? So with that sense of urgency, my first question to you is, how do we accelerate this? What do we need to do to accelerate this nature-based solutions process?
I thought you were asking how to accelerate the loss of wetland.
Do more.
Okay, I was all of a sudden I was having one of those like, is this a real question?
Alternative reality.
It's really hard because obviously momentum is working against us, and it's not a new issue. I think some of the worst losses have kind of happened where they are the easiest, and maybe some of the losses are the rate of loss is maybe slowing down only because we only have so much land. But that's not much of a comfort, obviously. I would say, if I had my magic wand and could wave it and say, okay, here's how we're going to address this. I think there are some fantastic studies that have been done as part of the GC3 over the last several years that I would love to see us have the resources to be able to implement at a high level. We have a wonderful green plan, and we have a goal of protecting 21% of Connecticut at the very least. Some would like to see 30%. Let's go. We're behind. That's an area of urgency. We need the resources. We need the staff to be able to do it. The magic wand piece of this is because I'm speaking beyond as a state employee where I maybe should be treading. I say all of this with the magic wand because it can't have a fiscal note, can't have a cost associated with it, but it does have a cost. These are investments that I feel that we do need to think about how we're going to make. That's essentially what we will have to do if we want to be more urgent rather than, again, lay out what's necessary and fall short on the resources to actually make it happen.
Thank you, Eric. And Leigh, why don't you wave your magic wand?
Let's see. I'm going to try and answer both questions, Amy. Kick me under the table if I go astray. So I'll say environmental problem solving, two of the greatest levers are policy and money. And so we've got some good legislative achievements. That's not all. We need to keep pushing. Also on the money side, the rate of loss, I mean, the scalability and the implementation of solutions is often tied to the availability of funding, money. We all know what the reality is of state and federal funds. And on the philanthropy side, if you look at the pie of all philanthropic giving on an annual basis, all environmental causes paired with all animal welfare charitable donations, we fill a slice of that pie that's about 2 to 3% on an annual basis. And so I really think what comes down to is embedding things like nature-based solutions in the way that we do business, getting smarter about how to think about bringing more resources to help scale our solutions. And so I could probably get way above my ski tips talking about the ways in which really sexy stuff like procurement innovation could create environmental markets and enable the buying and selling of the benefits of the work that we do and the impacts that accrue to beneficiaries and payers. But I'll try and hold myself off to just say, let's focus on the policy innovation. Let's focus on the getting more financial leverage into the system.
Thank you. Thank you both for those answers. If we only had a magic wand. So I think you're all the magic wands. You make the magic happen. You do the work, and we will we will make a difference. I'm going to go to a question that came from the audience, and it's for you, Eric, and it's a little bit more about the nuts and bolts, but I think it's a great question. Does the deep report separate what is new to the bill, or are you just collecting how we see this was condensed, or how we're currently doing things?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think we're trying to do a bit of both. As the charge to us in the legislation was to put forward both how we integrate and advance nature-based solutions. So as I mentioned earlier briefly, to integrate, we read as being the things that we're doing now, or perhaps are doing now with that we could do with a bit more of the nature-based solution connection. And then advance is what perhaps we're not doing now that we could be doing going forward, and helping to identify what those gaps might be. So the short answer is a bit of both. That's what we hope to do.
And I'll say, just to Eric's point, and this came up earlier with Representative Parker. I mean, we really achieved some significant victories last year with these two bills being two of them. And so implementation is critical, as I said earlier, and that takes some research, that takes some conversation. And so there is going to be an opportunity for, hopefully, more policy, more legislation to be generated as a result of the implementation work, the research work that's being done this year in next year's legislative session. And we look forward to that, because that will truly be taking recommendations and advancing them even further. It's 3:00, Lori, so we're going to wrap up. I will say this: there's some excellent questions here, Lori. If we could get those questions, could we get those, and then maybe do some responding? Oh, good. Okay, terrific. Yeah. Great. So those questions are wonderful, and I'm sorry that we didn't have enough time to get to all of them, but I want to thank you all so much for coming here today. If you want to get involved locally, look up your local land trust. If you don't know who that is, come to CLCC's website. We have a map. There's a land trust in almost every town, and certainly in a region. So get involved with your local land trust. Get involved with land conservation. It's a nature-based solution. Thank you all so much. Lori, thank you.
Okay, it's 3:00. The summit is closed. I have one final duty. Please take the pizza home. Now, one final note though. Something that Eric said in his breakout session on organizing. The power in this room, the intellectual capacity, the knowledge of issues. The key to this, though, is political organizing. Advocacy is critical here. And I just want to say one thing that he mentioned. Building non-traditional alliances is critical. Where is the Republican Party? Where is the business community? Where are the churches? Conversations with those are really critical to build long-term coalitions. So I would urge you to look at this issue. We need to organize, and we need to reach out to people who may not exactly think like us, but have an interest and a commitment to the environment. This is a very important lesson for successful advocacy at the legislature. So thank you very much for coming. This has been terrific, and please take the pizza. Thank you.